Now our next speaker is Senator Lynn Ruane, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and thank you, Minister, for your time today. I suppose it's quite hard to capture in words just how proud I am to have been part of this committee, and I owe that very much, I suppose, to my colleagues as well in the Civil Engagement Group who stepped aside and obviously didn't contest our spot on it, and it allowed me to have a voice in that room. I wasn't even born in 1983, so I definitely felt that I was the one with the least experience walking into the room out of the group, so I do thank them for their support in this. I'd also like to thank the Chair, who was very just and very fair and very patient throughout the process, and I thank her for her role in this historic time for women in Ireland. I think the report speaks for itself. It's clear, the recommendations are clear, with good descriptions of the thought process taken by the committee members and the factors that led us to decide as we did, and I hope that people take the time to read it. I don't think it's as fully complete as it could be. There were issues that I pushed to be included and that did not make it in, but for the most part I am extraordinarily proud of the work that we did and the report that was produced. I am thankful to the members who engaged in this process in an open and honest way, especially those who described the process as a journey. It was this journey that allowed real scientific and medical evidence to prevail while keeping the woman at the centre of the debate. Members challenged their long-held views and in many cases changed them. And I think it's one of the most powerful things as a public representative, or anyone really can do, is to admit growth, to admit that maybe their previously held expressed views are based on a lack of or incomplete information, and I'd like to applaud them for that. As we move forward from this report and towards a referendum, that educational process is one that needs to be replicated in communities across the country. And I hope that politicians can go forward and become ambassadors for starting those conversations and informing people about the realities of the 8th Amendment and what the criminalisation and illegality of abortion has meant for women in Ireland. I may have been a strong supporter of repeal on the committee, but it was not long ago that I went on a similar journey. It was only 5 short years ago I remember having conversations with friends and other students in college, where I expressed a lot of the misinformed and incorrect views on abortion and the 8th Amendment. I was challenged on them views, and as a result I took the time to educate and empower myself, and that has made all the difference. No matter your view on abortion, you should be fully armed with the facts, with the statistics, with the expert testimony and the testimony from women affected, and be fully aware of the impact of the 8th Amendment, its impact on reproductive rights, on female autonomy, on healthcare and on maternity, because it may radically change how you feel. It also may not, and that's going to be the case for some, but it's the responsibility of every politician and every person who will vote in this referendum to undergo the same process of information-led reflection and decision-making that has defined every step of the process that has resulted in us debating this report in the Oireachtas today. Now that we have been through the committee process and hours of expert testimony from women and doctors and lawyers and healthcare providers and international experts, the extensive debate on every aspect of the impact of the 8th Amendment on every part of women's healthcare and their lives, I now believe that the 8th Amendment is one of the primary barriers to reproductive freedom and the enjoyment of true equality by women in Ireland. It is a blunt instrument in our constitution that takes away the ability of women in this country to make fundamental decisions around their reproduction, maternity and their own lives. Because it is the lives of women that we are talking about. When you take away the ability of women to decide if and when she wishes to have a child, you take away her control over her own life. It has gone far beyond its original intended purpose, which is an ostensible constitutional ban on abortion, and has affected every aspect of women's healthcare and their medical autonomy. While the 8th Amendment affects every woman of childbearing age in this country, it disproportionately targets poorer women, migrant women and refugee women without the means or method to travel, and places them in the impossible situations, forced to choose between motherhood against their will or unsafe and illegal abortion procedures. It is archaic and a relic of Ireland that no longer exists, where women were mistreated, belittled and locked up if they violated a narrow set of dogmatic religious teachings of how women should behave and live their lives. It does not belong in the constitution of a modern, secular republic. It is morally wrong, and it will probably be one of my proudest moments as a member of the Oireachtas that I will be able to vote in favour of recommending its repeal. It goes without saying that I am proud of the contents of this report. I think it does a comprehensive job of covering many of the policy details that arise when legislating for abortion access. I would like to draw particular attention to the auxiliary recommendations, which are arguably the most important part of this report, as they relate to access to contraception, healthcare and sexual education, which every international expert said were the best methods of reducing abortion rates. However, I do recognise that a lot of the political, media and public attention has focused on the recommendation of access to abortion in the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. The Committee's decision to recommend a 12-week limit was not plucked from the sky. It was the recommendation of the Citizens' Assembly, and it is also widely accepted as an international and European-wide standard. We decided that it was an appropriate response to the issues that arise in terminations in cases of rape and incest, in terms of verifying sexual assault with survivors and unnecessarily re-traumatising them. It also matches the gestational limits in terms of the use of the abortion pill, and it's advised used up to 12 weeks of pregnancy. I was therefore struck by the comments made by namely on Taoiseach, but also, in fairness, echoed throughout many of the media outlets and through politicians at his post-Cabinet press conference last Wednesday, that our recommendations may be a step too far. I don't think that these recommendations are a step too far. Rather than trying to dismiss the results of two representative, accountable and democratic processes informed by expert evidence, I think we would be better off considering the extent to which we have become desensitised to the impact of the 8th Amendment and the horrific stories that come to light as a result. Every day we leave it in our Constitution is a step too far. I listened to many of the stories in the past few months from the Theatre Club's Not at Home installation, and I think of the woman who travelled to Leeds for an abortion, denied to her at home, and who accidentally drank a cup of tea on the flight over. She couldn't be put under an anaesthetic as a result, and because of this, she couldn't afford to fly back over on another day and had to undergo a surgical abortion with no anaesthetic that day. Her experience, that's a step too far. Women who had their bags searched in the airport, bags that had bloody clothes and underwear on display for the airport staff, that's a step too far. Loss of dignity to them grieving mothers, having to travel after major surgery and being exposed in a public place like that, that's a step too far. Women who had to sit in cinemas in Liverpool after abortion procedures, where they would be warm and somewhat comfortable, so that they were in public view if they started hemorrhaging, that's a step too far. Families who terminated in cases of fatal fetal abnormality and had the bodies of their babies sent to them as if they were an Amazon delivery, that's a step too far. Women who were raped and forced to continue their pregnancy because they couldn't afford to travel and because Irish law didn't deem them worthy of access to a termination, that's a step too far. Women who were forced to give birth against their will because they were either too poor to pay for flights or because they were a migrant with no passport, that's a step too far. When public representatives put out blatantly false and scaremongering information that abortion access on request up to 12 weeks will increase terminations in cases of Down syndrome, that's a step too far. Having to even step foot in an airport and travel abroad to access healthcare, the whole 134-mile trip to Liverpool, that's a step too far. Let's not make the mistake of standing still. Instead, let us take a step forward. It's not a step too far, it's just forward. I will not accept that these recommendations are too radical when the alternative is the status quo, which sees stories like these come about every single day and where women are forced to take their lives in their own hands to travel to another jurisdiction because some politicians in this country are either too pious or sanctimonious to accept that women need and will always need access to abortion, whether they like it or not. Politicians who say they cannot accept this report may feel they are taking a brave stand based on moral and principled opposition to abortion. But your position will not stop abortion. It will simply say to women in this country that your personal beliefs interfere too much to give them access to what they need, and good luck on the flight to the UK because you'll need it. You may be able to claim that your conscience is clear, that you didn't vote to make abortion legal in Ireland, but you did. You just required that it happen illegally and unsafely. This report is not a step too far. It's a step in the right direction, towards giving women in Ireland control over their reproductive health, their bodies and their lives, and will hopefully go some way to make amends for the historical treatment of women by the state. We may have been able to convince ourselves that the 8th Amendment stopped abortion in Ireland, but this report shows that it clearly didn't. Women just travelled abroad to access what wasn't legal here, or they performed illegal abortions at home on their own without medical supervision. To conclude, let's not make the mistake of collectively putting our heads in the sand again, as has been the case with this issue for the past 35 years. Let's do right by Irish women and accept the decisions of the Citizens' Assembly and the Oireachtas Committee, repeal the 8 and give women choice and control over their lives. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Senator Ruane.